Mhm.
Okay, good morning, good evening, or good night, I guess, to everyone who's joining us for this session of Nuffield Talks. Welcome. And yeah, we've got a great lineup tonight. The topic is, I'm just checking that this is working. Okay, yeah, the topic is how Nuffield has impacted your life and what value does it. Sorry, something's not working here.
No, it's working, Sam.
Yeah, I'm just getting a feedback.
Oh, just cut a bit, but
Okay. Okay. Anyway, we'll keep going. Great. Welcome to Nuffield Talks. So just to give you a quick introduction about the Nuffield network, because there's probably people here who are Nuffield members. There's also people here who might be applying for the Nuffield Scholarship, and people who are just curious about Nuffield for the first time. So the Nuffield network has been around for 70 years. There's about 2,000 people in the Nuffield family. They're mainly made up of farmers and ag professionals from all around the world. We've got a connection, a really strong connection in at least 40 countries. And the idea of Nuffield is that we invest in the most critical resource for the ag sector, and that is people. So we do that through providing scholarships, and the three people that are with me tonight are all Nuffield Scholars, and they get awarded a great opportunity to travel overseas to different countries, looking at a topic that is relevant to their sector, their country, their businesses, and bring that knowledge back and implant it in a practical way into the ag sector. You don't just do the Nuffield Scholarship, you become a Nuffield Scholar. So we're connected by a set of values, really, and it's about having courageous conversations. It's about looking for real meaning. We also have a commitment to lifelong learning, so we're continuously engaging in what is relevant and participating in an active manner, so contributing to that leadership and capacity building for each of our sectors in each of our countries. So just as an example, Martin and Emma haven't met each other before, but I haven't met Emma actually myself either, but
Yes.
it feels like we know each other. So that's just part of, I guess, the connection that we have. We know that we can have strong, robust conversations, and different points of view are welcome. So your questions tonight for the audience is it's open for discussion. So please, you can ask whatever questions are interesting to you around this topic. For those that have already joined us, just you can write in the chat on YouTube, say a quick hello, where you're from, and probably what town, state, country you're from, because we've got people joining from all over the world. And yeah, we'll get onto it. So before I introduce our panelists, my name's Sally Thompson. I am an Australian. I've been living in Brazil on a dairy farm now for 8 years, and I'm part of the founding group of Nuffield Brazil. And while we're here, I'll just give a shout out and a big thanks to our Nuffield Brazil sponsors who, without the sponsors, we don't have scholarships and we can't build the capacity of people. So we've got TIA, we've got Grupo Bom Futuro, we've got New Farm, we've got Stara, Biotrigo, and Ribersolo. They're just the sponsors that support the Brazilian Nuffield Brazil scholarships. Every country has their own set of sponsors. So yeah, welcome to our panelists. These are the stars of the show. They'll be doing all the talking tonight. We've got Murilo Bettarello from Brazil. It's a little bit dark where Murilo is, you can see. It's 6 o'clock at night. We've got Martin Davies. Martin is from the UK, but when he's not being constrained by COVID, he spends his time probably everywhere as the CEO of an international investment company. He's at the moment in the UK, and it's 10 o'clock at night for Martin. And we've got Emma Germano in Australia with 7 o'clock, nice, bright, early start. So thank you to you three for being available. Yeah, so I think we'll get straight into it. We've got each panelist will just give a couple of opening remarks directly around the topic. So we might start with Murilo. If you'd just like to say hi and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your Nuffield journey and how it's impacted your life so far.
Thank you, Sally. So I think I'm the youngest here in the Nuffield journey. I'm just starting. So I've been awarded with the scholarship in 2017. So this impact my life. It's like from 3 years from now, but it's impact my life a lot. And I hope it will continue to impact, and I will give back the things that I learned and the connection I made to like Brazilian agriculture and world agriculture. So that's so I'm in the process to be hardly impacted by nothing. I'm an agronomist engineer in Brazil. I work as a consultant for agriculture business, and also I'm in entrepreneurship for with ag startup that help farmers get better decision and also acquire inputs and connect them to also advisors. So in my journey in Nuffield, beside like doing all the programs, travel to more than 15 countries, I researched the digitalization of agriculture and how farmers can take the driver's seat in this digital revolution in agriculture and not just be user of new technology. So I visited undeveloped agriculture countries like Asia and Africa, and very developed like Silicon Valley, farmers in California, and even big farmers in Brazil. So happy to share, and it's a pleasure to share the panel with Martin and Emma. So good night here.
Lovely, thanks Murilo. And Martin, good evening.
Hi Sally, thanks for that. Great to be here with you, with everybody listening in. I just want to give you a snapshot of my life, I suppose, where I came from and where I am today, and just really how Nuffield was a very pivotal thing in my career. So I grew up in Wales on a small sheep and beef farm, studied agriculture at university, worked in corporate agriculture in the UK for about 13 years. That was with the Cooperative Group Farms, who were probably the biggest corporate farming business in the UK at the time. And here we are now. Murilo's the youngest star on the panel. I'm the oldest, I think, tonight. But today I run a business which invests in farmland globally. So I run a business which is investing capital for 26 institutional investors today. So we manage about 800,000 hectares of land in the US, Brazil, Chile, Poland, Romania, Australia, New Zealand. And really, if I go back to 2006 when I did my Nuffield Scholarship, that was really the pathway for me into a completely different career, working in the investment industry. And that's where I've been working really since 2006-07 when I completed my scholarship. So I looked at the impact of biofuels on the agricultural sector in the UK. Didn't go to the conventional places, you might say. So I went to places like Ukraine, Russia, Sweden, Germany, maybe not the most sensible option from a language point of view and getting around, but those are really the places back in 2006 which were the leading lights agriculturally, particularly considering biofuels. So for me, it's been a transformational experience, and that continues today. I'm involved in Nuffield International, and in actual fact, the business that I work for, a number of the investment structures that we have actually sponsor an international scholarship. So we have done that now for, I think we're on our 6th scholarship for 2020. So I'll just leave those opening remarks there, but very happy to get into some questions later.
Fantastic. Lots of questions, I'm sure. And Emma, good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Sal. Thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm Emma and I'm here in Australia and I'm in Melbourne, the COVID hotspot in Australia at the moment. I did my Nuffield Scholarship in 2014. So it's been quite it feels like a lifetime ago actually, because I suppose once you've done Nuffield, you never quite finish Nuffield. You get a phone call and the answer is always yes. It doesn't matter what the request is, because you do feel indebted. Looking on 6 years later, I guess every aspect of my life has now been touched by that experience of having completed the scholarship travel period. My business changed. So I came from the farm, grew up on the farm. I remember the first time I put a social media post when I was back working on the farm, and it was a bit of a lucky go back to the farm. It certainly wasn't because I thought I belonged there. The first social media post I put up said, "I am not a farmer. I am a million other things, but I am not a farmer." And I think for me, the number one thing that Nuffield did was made me realize that there is no other job that I would rather do than be a food producer. But most importantly, the Nuffield experience is about the people that you meet and the family you become a part of. And as Murilo and Martin have been doing their introductions and talking about what they do, I've just like written myself a little note here saying, oh, I've got to contact both of them, because there's some connection. There's always some connection with any other Nuffield scholar that you speak to that that enhances your business, enhances your professional life, and definitely enhances your personal life. So if I look at my closest group of friends now and the people that I speak to daily, the people that I go to for advice, to soundboard some of my ideas, and I have had plenty of them, and particularly when I was traveling, every time I returned home to the farm, Dad had to accept that we were going to be going into some new commercial venture. So it was like, no, we're going to go into pigs, and no, we're going to do chickens and eggs, and no, we need to have a retail shop. And so many ideas that you gain from traveling around, and not just going to businesses globally, but those other Nuffield scholars are just that wealth of knowledge and support. So I think once you've been part of the experience, you almost, I honestly have no idea what my life would look like now, and I don't know if I'd still be on the farm. So for me, it's about my entire lifestyle, and I'm just forever indebted and forever appreciative of that experience. And it also, I think, gives you a sense of courage to be able to go out and learn. So when you get told when you receive your Nuffield scholarship that it's like a golden key, and I think the little secret here is that they don't actually give you any such thing as a golden key. It's just this knowledge and this support and this courage that's kind of like injected into you to go out and ask the questions and knock on the doors. And in fact, that's exactly what the golden key is. So definitely a life-changing experience. And I think that it's really sounds so cliche when people say, oh, it's a life-changing experience. But for me, I actually, simply don't know what my lifestyle and what my career would be looking like if I hadn't done a Nuffield scholarship.
Yeah, fantastic. That's what's so great about having the three of you on this panel, because Nuffield is something that's a little bit difficult to explain as a concept, but when we see it through the practical experiences and the contributions that you henceforth have and make to the sector, to community, within your own lives, it's what really brings it alive. So one of the things, and it follows on a little bit from your first contributions, is in Nuffield they talk about like the aha moment, or moments, which are just when you're on your scholarship and there's just something that happened that you just still kind of keep with you. You've taken that forward in your life, or it's really just changed the way that you've thought about things. I wonder if you might comment on that. Maybe we'll start with Murilo. You were on your scholarship most recently, so maybe it's still fresh in your mind. Do you have an aha moment that that turned the lights on for you that you're interested in sharing?
Okay, there's like so much aha moment that sometimes keep coming, even in the shower. You imagine, oh, I remember that thing that I was seeing and talked to a farmer in like India, and oh, that's interesting. Now that I know this, I could use, and you start to link up the things that happened like 2 or 3 years ago. So the aha keeps coming. So that's the magic of Nuffield. But I think the first thing that Nuffield impact me and blow my mind is when you travel with a group of leaders that have multiple challenges in their countries in 55, 60 days together, traveling like several continents and several countries in 60 days, discussing about the challenge. That's like a blowing mind, and this impact you a lot in the GFP program. It's this program that you spend 60 days with like 10 or 8 a group of people that are leading in their sector. So you visit a very small farmers of organic in India, and you discuss about their challenge, and then you go to a big operation in United States or in Europe maybe. But one of very wow moment that I passed is when I was in a fish council in Denmark. I have no clue about fishing. I have no link about fishing industry, but like I'm a farmer, like grain farmer, livestock farmer here in Brazil as well. So I didn't have any clue about fishing, or fishing industry. But I was in Denmark. Fishing industry is very important in Denmark. And we were in their council, and then we were in a meeting of their board, and they say that what's the most important thing for them is bringing youth to fish industry there. So they, like, Denmark's a very developed country. The young guys, young ladies doesn't want to go to the boats and build a fish boat, and so they support the sector together, united. They support like schools of fishery. They give a loan of 2 years for the young guys that want to build their boat. They have an internship program that they don't pay to be in the school, the University of Fishery, and then they go to 1 year of program as an internship in the boats of the associates, so they can pay for the school in this time, working for them in 1 year. And if they have good behavior, if they get good developed, they can have a good loan to them. And we ask for their leaders. So are you not incentivize like new people to compete with you because you are going to give loan to them? They will buy a new ship, and like fishing farmers, not like you have your boundaries, everybody fishing the sea at the same sea, so they compete for the same stocks, and the guys are incentivizing that. So why is that? Like it's a kind of crazy thing for like a Brazilian perspective that a lot of people want to sometimes hold information. And they say, oh, if we have a fish industry strong and united, we can compete very powerful with the whole world. We can increase technology. We can develop new technology, and this will drive to a strong fish industry in the future in Denmark. So that's a very interesting whole moment that I have. So just to keep in one, but we gonna share more, but that's a good example.
Fantastic. Thanks, Murilo. Sounds a little bit like what Nuffield is doing in terms of building capacity, just another step along the ladder. Martin, back in 2006, when you were doing your Nuffield scholarship, I'm sure the program even looked quite different to what it does today. But what aha moments have you had that have stayed relevant through your life?
Oh, Sally, much the same as Murilo. Many moments that have been quite life-changing, as Emma said. But I think if I had to pick on one thing, I spent quite a bit of time in Ukraine back in 2006, and I happened to run into somebody working for a Russian investment bank who were very focused on investing in the agricultural sector. And their motives really were, biofuels was a big, producing feedstock for biofuels at the time was quite a big theme for them. But the other thing which they were very focused on was they were looking at the trends that exist in terms of population growth and more discerning diet in the middle classes. And they had identified the opportunity to invest in agriculture as a very thematic sector. So you've got this theme underpinning agriculture where you have population growth, you have more discerning diet. So we need to produce double the amount of food we do today in 50 years' time. So it was very apparent to me then that there was a fairly significant opportunity from an investment point of view to bring institutional capital into the sector. And I guess if I look at how my work career has unfolded since that, that's really what I focused on and spent a lot of time on. The World Bank today say that the agricultural sector needs $80 billion of outside investment on an annual basis. So that's a theme that's very much still there. And I think prior to doing my travel and study, it really wasn't something that I ever thought about. And if I think about coming out of the UK in 2006, the ag sector was very much in the doldrums. If I remember correctly, wheat was 70 euros a ton, so let's say $80 a ton. I'd been involved in a business where I'd done a lot of restructuring, getting rid of people, reducing the workforce and that sort of thing. And suddenly I could see this transformational opportunity within the ag sector. And really, I think today that is more true maybe than it was in 2006, that the sector does need outside capital to enable it to evolve and develop and to be more focused on solutions from a climate change point of view. So that's probably the one moment. Just one other thing which was a eureka moment for me, Sally, was on my first visit to Germany, I worked out how to get into a Volkswagen Golf, which I'd locked my keys inside of without breaking the window. So maybe that's another slightly unusual eureka moment that came out of it all.
Yeah, well, it's practical life skills that we're looking for here as well, isn't it? That's great. And before we hear from Emma, I'll just invite people who are listening to us on YouTube, you can start sending in some questions. Just write them in on the chat and we'll direct them to whoever you want to, or if it's a question for everyone, just leave it as an open question and we can ask the team here. So yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of things bubbling up, but Emma, please, it's such a nice thing to be able to share these moments that are so special in your life. We'd love to hear what's been one of your aha eureka moments.
Yeah, I was actually, as I was listening to the guys there, I had the highlights reel of aha moments going through my mind and working out which one is like so important now, like which, and I guess they all had different impacts in different times. One of the things that I think for me, it was really about the cultural shifting that I felt happening within myself, this awareness of other cultures and how the way Australia does things, all things, not just agricultural things, but everything about our society and the way that we make decisions and how we govern the country, they're Australian centric. And I think until you leave your place of home, and where things are just normal, and that's just the normal political system, and you get challenged, or the normal religious traditions that your country is familiar with, until you go out and you're thrust into these really bizarre situations, I suppose. Sitting down, kind of meditating in a temple in India and contemplating, religion around the world. I think for me, that was an aha moment, and it had nothing to do with agriculture, but I guess it kind of did, because it taught me that my subject, or my topic, was about looking for export markets for our produce. So becoming more culturally aware, I think, started to really open up my eyes as to how you can't just have a product and send it out to the world and say, this is how we do it, and that's just the end. You actually have to think about where your product's going and how it's going to be received by a culture or a nation or whatever. So that was an aha moment. And equally, another aha moment was standing in an abattoir in Qatar. And again, it was probably more of a cultural experience for me. So the experience of watching animals being slaughtered according to different religious traditions, and why it's so important. And again, coming from Australia, I think I had a really narrow mindset about how we do things is right, and walking through that the animal market that was around the abattoir, and I saw this emaciated goat, and I just looked and I thought, how can they leave the goat in this state? Like, we would never in Australia, leave the goat standing out in the field like that. You would dispatch it, or you would put it down, to put it out of its misery, because you knew you weren't going to eat it. And I was just so shocked, and I almost looked at it and thought it was barbaric. And then when I started asking some questions, inshallah, God willing, so God will take care of that animal, and it will be in charge of the beginning of its life and the end of its life. And for me, it was something incredibly deeply moving and almost paradigm shifting, that, hang on a minute, just because I believe so fiercely that this is the right way, actually that's completely colored by the tradition, the culture, and the lifestyle of my parents and my society that I've been grown up in. And I think something's so right, but actually I've just been shown how there can be another way that's also equally just as right, because there's no right or wrong in that situation. So I think that was an aha moment. And also, and I think I have to refer to this one because I refer to it so often now in my role, in my advocacy role, where we do a lot of government advocacy on behalf of agriculture. Something that I learned when I was in a kibbutz in Israel. I just could not, again, it was, more about the cultural and the tradition and the fabric of society, I think, that was fascinating to me. I just could not get past the fact that everybody equally contributes everything they earn into the kibbutz, and then they split it equally. I was just like, please, capitalism says no. My brain cannot get around this. And I probed, and and on Nuffield, you often think to yourself, am I being rude? Like, the curiosity makes you ask these questions, and generally you have literally all the doors open to you, and you're allowed to kind of ask whatever you want. A lot of the hosts and a lot of the places that you visit, when you explain that you have a thirst for knowledge, they're so happy for you to delve into some of the nitty gritties and ask where the skeletons are hidden and things like that. And I remember the guy who was leading the kibbutz that week, because it was something that rotated, he was actually a surgeon. And I said to him, are you telling me honestly, you put your surgeon's wage into the kibbutz equally along someone who would contribute their cleaner's wage to the kibbutz, and you don't have any problem with that whatsoever? And he explained to me, he said, Emma, our kibbutz is very, very rich. They had an agricultural product that the whole kibbutz sold, and obviously they worked on together. It was actually Netafim. And he said, and the rich can afford their ideology. And I think that's something that for me has been, that was really awakening for me, because it made me consider now, when we're thinking about how to influence government and how to create government policy, that the rich can afford their ideology. And I think in times where, particularly at the moment during global pandemic, we've seen people turning back to thinking about where their food comes from. We've seen shortages on shelf here in Australia, which is just, I know that that's not uncommon in many places around the world, but in Australia, for, the supermarket shelves to be bare is really, really challenging. And I think that now when I'm speaking and talking about agriculture, I'm really keen to stay away from just talking about ideology and allowing things to go further than ideology, because I always think we're such a rich and lucky country that we speak so much about ideology to the detriment of speaking about ideas. And for me, that was just something in my mind that I haven't forgotten, and I don't think I will forget, because it was just really so valuable and such a different perspective, and one that I don't think I would have gained had I not gone into that, that particular physical circumstance to learn that.
Fantastic.
Sally, I just want to pick up on a point there that Emma brought up, just seeing the different cultural changes in things that you go and look at, people that you meet, and understanding that. So I think the human race, we like the status quo because it's comfortable. And if you think about Nuffield, the experience that Nuffield brings, so you are part of a group globally of the most forward and entrepreneurial people in the agricultural sector. And I think it challenges your thinking and challenges what you like about the status quo in a way that no other experience can do so. So 2006 was the first year that there was a contemporary scholars conference that was in Utrecht in the Netherlands. So me, as one of the group of UK scholars, met the Australian scholars, the scholars from New Zealand, the Netherlands, Germany, Canada. Brazil wasn't part of the mix at that point in time, but just being thrown into that group of people who were thinking about things very differently, and to the point Emma makes, we all have a very different culture and perspective on life generally, and it challenges your thinking like no other experience. And if you look at where the agricultural sector is today, notwithstanding the COVID-19 complication that we currently have, but we are faced with some of the most difficult challenges maybe the industry has ever had to deal with, and we desperately need people that don't think conventionally, and I think Nuffield is an environment that brings about that thinking and approach that the agricultural sector is really desperate for.
Yeah, fantastic, Martin. And that connects in with a question here that is actually directed to you from Andre. And it's, what advice would you give to a 2020 Nuffield Scholar starting up? Or let's say a 2021 applicant, somebody who's thinking about applying for a scholarship now?
Well, my advice to anybody, so I think we all have initially a very clear view on what we think we want to study. But to the point Emma makes about being in an abattoir or a temple, I have to say, Emma, I didn't do much meditation whilst I was going around various locations, but it doesn't matter who you meet, what they do. There is a very rich learning experience just from meeting a whole range of different people. And they can be involved in things which you would never think you would ever look at. I remember spending quite a bit of time with somebody in the Ukraine, a Swedish guy actually, who set up a vegetable growing business, which frankly had very little to do with biofuels, but just meeting this guy, he'd moved to Ukraine, seen the opportunity, had developed the business, exporting, producing for McDonald's and various other people like that. And it's quite often the things which are outside agriculture as well that you learn most from. I think one of the things that the industry probably has not been particularly good at historically is adapting or transformational movement of things that are done in other sectors and other industries. So I would encourage anybody to not get too hung up on their topic of study. The most important thing is just to meet as many people. I remember giving a lecture to a group of Ukrainian students who I don't think were studying agriculture, but it was just the experience and their perspective on Western Europe and places like the UK, just learning from that that experience.
Perfect, thank you. I'll just jump to a question that's come in and get back to your question, Thiago, in a second. One here from Fabiano. What are the 3 great skills that a leader in the agribusiness must have or develop? Who'd like to have a go at that? Yeah, you're all being polite.
No, just trying to narrow down the 3 skills, I suppose. You probably need more than 3. I guess the ability to learn, and because things always change. And, you know, my dad says, you know, it always takes 3 seasons to get things right. So actually, you don't need to be learning on the spot. You actually need to have learnt it 3 years ago. So I guess that's one thing that I think is awesome about Nuffield, is this ability just to become a quick thinker and to change and to adapt, and to have been exposed to all that innovation and innovative thinking, not so much innovation, but innovative thinking, and people, as Martin said, you know, people who are constantly thinking outside the square. It actually starts enabling you to start thinking outside the square, because sometimes the things that are in front of you, you actually need to look at it from a very different perspective to see opportunities. So I would say that you need to be a quick learner. You've got to be, or not a quick learner, but very curious and quick. And you've got to be ready to, you've got to be courageous. I think I think that is for anything in life. You have to have courage. So be thoughtful and weigh up all of the opportunities that are in front of you, and don't take unnecessary risks, of course, but you have to have courage. Otherwise, nothing ever changes. And I mean, it might just be my the horticulture part of, well, maybe not horticulture, but maybe the horticulture part of my life, where I'm dealing with wholesalers in the market. I think you have to be a really good negotiator to be a great, I think you have to be a great negotiator just to get by in life. But I think in agriculture, you have to be a great negotiator.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks. Murilo, do you have something to add there?
Yeah, I think just to add in a question before, like, I think one of the things that also we learn, it's linked about this leadership, it's that agriculture, it's not about planting and harvest. Like agriculture, it's about politics, leadership, economy, food safety, and even peace. So today there is the agriculture is linked a lot of about peace and food safety. So you see, like in Qatar and in rich countries in the Middle East, agriculture, it's not a matter of produce, it's a matter of money and investment and have the technique. And in food safety, it doesn't depend from other countries. So if you go to Europe, it's more about social, to give like the status, like the keep people on the earth, like also economy, but it's have very social power. In Brazil, it's kind of mixed. In Brazil, you have very small holders, people that it's very family farms, are very poor people, and you have huge farms of 100,000 hectares. So you see that agriculture is not about just planting and harvest food. It's about much more than that. And in the leadership, I think it's very linked about be an open mind and learning, keep learning. And the world now, it's changing very fast, and this changing just got in agriculture. So agriculture were know about being more traditional. Things take time to change, like maybe just changing the next generation that take it 40 years. Now it's not more like that. So even in agriculture, things are changing fast. Farmers need to be in an open mind to keep their farm. Even there is the matter of scale. If they don't have scale, they need to be in a niche market. They need to add value in the production, and to be part of, they need to build a social media. They need to try to sell direct, or they need to go to a scale or commodity market, be very efficient, have the low cost of production. So they need to know where they are, and they need to, in this, like in all this big picture, and they need to be open mind to test and pilot new business models.
Yeah, great. And I might just slip in the second part of our kind of topic question, which dovetails nicely into what you both have just contributed. And it's, what value does Nuffield bring to the ag sector in your country, or perhaps for Martin in your sector? So if you could just think of some practical examples where you've seen, you know, the Nuffield effect come into force, and share with us, that'd be great. We might start with you, Martin.
Right, Sally, I'm going to cheat you, and I'm going to go back to the last question, because there's two things which I think are worthy of mention. So agriculture, if you're in farming, it's primary production, so you have to be adaptive. That's one of the key things I think that anybody in agricultural business needs to have. But the other thing, which I think people don't always talk about that much, but the best farmers, the best people in agribusiness are able to simplify the complex, and they're able to focus on the things that really matter. And the last thing I would say is critical is agriculture. In running an agricultural business, it's multifunctional. There's so many different things that you need to be good at. So what you need to be good at is you need to be good at identifying people that are significantly better than you at dealing with a particular area, and actually bringing them into your business and developing them and engaging them. If you can do all those things, we clearly can't, because if we could we'd be in Monte Carlo on a yacht, because we'd be so wealthy, and we wouldn't be here.
Would we though?
Those are key things. Okay, so the other question, which I've actually forgotten what it was now.
Well, no, that's great. It's just some practical examples where those three things that you've mentioned, where you've seen that they've actually been put into practice, because they're great ideas, but just where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, I'm joking, Sally. Of course, I can remember.
He says, hey, this is a master interviewee here, everybody. Take note of how Martin is just negotiating this so skillfully.
Okay, so let me give you an example of, so I mentioned that two of the investment companies that we manage sponsor a scholar. And if I think back, probably 2 or 3 years ago, our scholar was Carla Borges, who is an unbelievably entrepreneurial young lady running her own farming business in Mato Grosso. So one of the things that Carla saw, I think it was in the UK, so I think she saw LEAF, linking environment and farming, and she saw this open farm Sunday concept where farmers bring school children and people onto the farm, because one of the things that the sector has been not particularly good at historically is just actually educating our consumer as to what we do, which probably is the reason why there's so much negativity about agriculture and some of the things that we do. But that's Open Farm Sunday is something that really tries to bring young people into farms, families and so on, to understand what's going on. And Carla had seen that concept and has been able to develop something, not exactly the same, but something with the same theme and trying to achieve the same thing in Brazil. So that comes back to that point I made there about transformation. I think anybody doing a scholar is going to see things done in a location which they will inevitably want to bring back to the UK. This is another good example. So the late Andrew Green was a Nuffield Scholar, as in Greens of Soham. He went to the US, I think it was probably in the 1960s or 70s, can't tell you when exactly, but he saw vegetables being packed in plastic, probably not that great a news in the current world, but that was something he brought back to the UK, and Greens of Soham became a massive producer of produce with innovation around packaging for the supermarket sector in the UK. Maybe today's innovation in that respect is looking at biodegradable and recyclable packaging made from cornstarch or whatever. I don't know, but those are just two examples off the cuff.
Fantastic, thank you. Murilo, do you have what value does Nuffield bring to the ag sector in Brazil? Now, Brazil's an interesting one because it's quite recent in Nuffield history. The first group of Nuffield scholars started visiting only in 2010, 10 years ago. And then the first scholar is only 5 years ago. So, but what value do you see what does Nuffield bring to Brazil that's different?
No, I think Nuffield is extremely important for Brazilian agriculture. I think Brazilian agriculture needs to be engaged with Nuffield because in Brazil we have the language barrier. So the Brazilian people, mainly farmer, doesn't used to travel abroad, mostly for tourism. And it's hard to them to travel the farmer in a farmer perspective, not like a company, a big ag company director, but in a farmer perspective, it's hard to them to travel abroad by business, and that's isn't. So I believe it's a great opportunity to them to engage with Nuffield, to give them a global perspective. So what agriculture is. What's the strength of each country? What's the weakness of each countries, and what compared to that, where Brazil is positioned? So Brazil is one of the top agriculture countries now. Like we did an awesome job. Like we start from the 70s as a food important in the 70s, so it's like 50 years ago. Now we are one of the third agriculture country in the world. So we are at first exporter or producer for the main all the main crops. But for other side, we did a very, very good job inside the gate, I think, inside the farm. So we have a high efficient in production, but we still need to improve in outside the gate. What I mean this is like, we need to be part in the seats of agriculture deals around the world, in the seats of like European Union, the developing market, that it's the consumer of high value crops. We need to have our leadership understanding how they can access that, how they can communicate about Brazil. We have a big issue of environmental, like Brazil. All the world thinks that Brazil is devastating Amazon, but we are the only country in the world that have 66% of forest, native vegetation in our country, and like at 25 or 27%, I don't remember the actual number, it's inside the farm. So the farmers in Brazil preserve 1/4, like 1/3 of the Brazilian environment area, and the world doesn't know that, and we are just like going to be able to communicate that if we have leaders that know about how the word play, how the word agriculture play, how they go, what's the difference, the strength, the weakness, and we need to have leaders engage on that. So I think Nuffield can bring to Brazilian agriculture a good overview about the world agriculture and train these leaders to sit in these tables and to participate in a very good way. And as you said, like Nuffield Brazil is still young, and we need people like engage, participate, so it's open to that as well.
Good on you. And Emma, you have a great perspective. So, you know, Australia's been a Nuffield member for almost 70 years. And, you know, you've been involved in Nuffield since 2014. So what do you see the impact of Nuffield is for the ag sector in Australia?
I think I can sum it up. The lady who was responsible for my investment, so my investor from Horticulture Innovation, there was a big horticulture convention that was on, and she walked up to a group. I was standing with a group of people, and we were chatting, and we were animated, and we were having a debate, and she walked over and she said, oh, you can always see where the Nuffield Scholars are in a room, because they're always standing together having some life-changing conversation that's just a cut above the rest. And I thought that was like really quite clever. But I think that the best example to see how Nuffield is having an influence particularly in Australia. So I'm the Vice President of the Victorian Farmers Federation, so our peak industry body in our state here of Victoria. And we have a board of 9 directors. 2 of those directors are independent, so not farmers. So that leaves to 7 being farmers, and of that 7, 5 of us are actually Nuffield Scholars. So I think that there is such a that education of that global context, I think, gives you this really well-rounded experience of agriculture, and again, not just from the perspective that maybe you've always seen it from. So that building of the individual, that's not just about the knowledge, but also about the confidence, because I think there is something that confidence that you gain in just going and finding out what it is that you don't even know what it is that you want to find out to know. That gives you a sense of confidence. And I think you do naturally when you and it probably takes a couple of years on the back of your scholarship to really for it to settle in and to feel comfortable. I think I felt really unsettled for a few years after I had finished traveling, first because you're almost used to that fast pace, and you're used to having those really challenging conversations where not that you're aggressive, but you're allowed to be really robust. Because you're with these other really robust people. So everybody, there's no shrinking violets in Nuffield. And so learning how to get your word in edgewise when someone who's equally as passionate maybe has a different perspective is a skill to learn. But it's almost, I felt a little deflated, I guess, in the year or 2 after, when I didn't get to just have that dynamic conversation with everybody I came across, because it would have just been way too full on. But yeah, that building of the individual in confidence and knowledge, I think, starts to have a major impact in how policy is created. So like I said, we've got more than half of our board in our state farming advocacy group speaking to government all the time are Nuffield Scholars, and bring that perspective. And I think that's a great example of the level of influence that Nuffield can have in both the agricultural sector and indeed in society itself. And I mean, none of us stand there and say, you don't say, I'm Emma Germano and I'm a 2014 Nuffield Scholar, which you kind of do for the first couple of years, but that influence is definitely there. And the fact that it has created this web of other scholars creates this that vibe of influence, I think, is really strong, because it's not just you on your own. You've got, you said 2,000 people as part of the family. I would say, I've got a network of at least probably 50 people that I would call regularly, and they give you that support and give you that knowledge and give you that understanding. And often they're off in some other advocacy group doing something else. So I think that network creates that influence, the knowledge, and the courage and confidence. It is having a major impact. And I see when I see the other scholars, and we all kind of give each other the wink that we know we're here together and we've got each other's back. So I think that creates a huge amount of influence.
Fantastic.
Sally, just to add something really to extend on some of the things that Emma is highlighting. If you think about the type of people that we need within the agricultural sector in any country, we need balanced and pragmatic people who can understand the viewpoint from others, because we have again, human nature is such that we can become very myopic and very narrow-minded unless we are challenged and experience other things. And this experience that we've been talking about, I think, prepares people to participate in the type of discussion around policy framing in countries, just because of the experience you go through. You meet people you don't necessarily agree with their viewpoint, but you respect that viewpoint, and you learn to understand that people have the right to another viewpoint. It might be quite different to yours, but that's a really important thing that the agricultural sector needs in every country, is balanced and pragmatic people. And I think Nuffield does develop that thoughtfulness in people.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. You might have answered Fabiano's question of what is the X factor change that the Nuffield experience made for you or is still making in that one. But I'll just jump to one other question. There's a slight change of tack here from Dara, and I'll ask this to Martin. As a young person soon to graduate from university, where I'm only asking you because you're the oldest, Martin, even though in the context of Nuffield we've only got young guys here, young people. As a young person soon to graduate from university, where did you feel you gained the most beneficial experience relevant to your current career?
Sally, I'm going to be having a word with Nuffield International about this ageist approach you're taking with me. Okay, so what's most relevant to me? I work in an industry where I didn't originally come from. I work in the finance industry, so I work with unbelievably smart people that look at investing in all sorts of different things and think about that in a very sophisticated way. I think that if you look at what you do over time, that there's so many different things that you learn that are relevant to that. But I think to me, one of the most important things that I think I have learned is, and this is something I did experience when I was doing my Nuffield and probably in the years immediately after, where I did work in Eastern Europe a lot. So we tend to become in developed countries and the Western world probably quite materialistically viewed, and Emma come to the ideology. I think the one thing which I experienced while I was doing my Nuffield was going to places where the people just really didn't have a great deal, but they placed a huge amount of value on simple things in life, relationships, friendship, and doing the right thing morally. And I think if you work in the investment industry, if your starting point is whatever you do, you have a moral compass that guides you towards doing what is right for. So essentially, the business I work for, we're managing money that pensioners pay or people contributing to a pension scheme pay in. So you have a moral obligation to do the right thing. And I think one of the things that I learned from meeting people who did not have a great deal, they had very strong morals and placed a lot of value on simple things in life. And in a world where we have a lot, it's quite easy to forget those sort of things. So that's something I would say for me was quite important in what I do today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And we'll just jump back on, this is one of our first questions from Tiago. Thanks for joining us today and sharing your experiences. In your opinion, and this might be our last question actually, in your opinion, how has Nuffield improved since you joined, and how can we engage more people now on, or how can we improve from now on? Who wants to have a first go at that? Murilo, since you're the youngest here, the most recent.
Yeah, it's hard to know how improve, like how improve in the last year. I think like Nuffield's like a startup organization. Like they have more than 70 years old, but it's a startup in the mindset of innovative, and like almost all the board and the directors are they donate their time to Nuffield because they want to give back. So we are also always trying to improve. For now on, with all this pandemic and COVID, Nuffield will have to rethink about, and we are doing that in meetings, and to rethink about a lot of things, how we were like travel from people from like more than 10 or sometimes in 60 or 30 different countries, visiting farms all the day, keep visiting. So we will need to see after all this pass, how we gonna repositionate us in this. So I believe it's going a lot of digital, like we are doing this type of meeting we never done before this pandemic, and it's going to be free for everybody. It's going to be everybody in the world could access and share this experience. So I think it's great. So with the great people we have on board, we'll be a very nice place and better in the future, as we always being evaluated.
Fantastic, thank you. And Emma,
I guess
how's Nuffield improved? Okay, you cool with the question?
Good with the question. I think that it's probably the expanding footprint and the new countries coming on board. So I think that that's probably, and Nuffield International, that, you know, being innovative through there and allowing more people to come together from more places. I just think that that is going to just enhance that knowledge tenfold, because ultimately it's when you are on your GFP, I think, and I know that not all countries do a GFP, but for me, and further to one of the points that Martin made, I remember being in a little rental car driving through France because flights had failed us, with my gang on my GFP, and there was someone in the car from Wales, someone from Ireland, someone from New Zealand, myself, and we were having a grand old debate about subsidies in agriculture. Something that, you know, I was very black and white about before I started having that conversation, but to have actual scholars themselves from so many different places, and to see those programs growing in Brazil and some of the other countries that we know have been starting to come on board, I think that is going to be, that'll do another, maybe another chapter of transformation for Nuffield.
Yeah, absolutely. And Martin, this is a great question for Martin, who can speak as a scholar and also as an investor in the program.
Yeah, I think there's been many improvements and enhancements made. So I mentioned earlier that in 2006, there was the first Contemporary Scholars Conference, where there was a gathering of scholars from all countries. That has developed significantly and really is an unbelievable event with some excellent speakers. It moves around different locations. So I think that's a unique opportunity. It's probably for young people in the agricultural sector, it's probably the most unique opportunity there is globally, any event, anywhere, just to mix with a group of like-minded people who will challenge your thinking, and to hear from some of the most forward-thinking people in the sector generally. Emma mentioned the Global Focus Program. I think that's developed a lot. There are some unbelievable programs that are run there, going to places that maybe in the past scholars would probably have been a little bit reluctant to go to, because they're more challenging places to travel to. I think the mentorship, which is now really built into the program, guiding scholars through the various stages, is really important. Emma mentioned development of the footprint and the network. So we haven't really talked at all during this session about the alumni network. So I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's 1,700 Nuffield scholars from the past who are floating around. Most of them are doing pretty unbelievable things in their own right. So the access to that, I'm a bit of a, you might say, a technology Luddite, so Twitter and all these things aren't really the type of things that people from my generation get too involved in. But I think some of the help that's given to scholars thinking about how they can use social media and some of the things around that is invaluable. So there's a lot of different things. One of the things I know that the UK are looking at right now is the way of getting some recognition for the Nuffield Scholarship from an academic point of view. Nuffield, one of the things you learn about Nuffield is evolution is just part and parcel of life in agriculture and business, and in the same way as a farm business needs to evolve, so does Nuffield. And without doubt, some of the challenges that the pandemic is going to present in the way of limiting travel and so on is going to mean that we're going to have to think quite differently, maybe on the adaptation of the historic model for scholarship. So many things have changed over time, all for the good. But I would encourage people to bring forward ideas on how the program can change and evolve. It's already unparalleled in the way of building capacity and leadership in the agricultural sector. And what I think we need to do is to be able to bring that to other locations and countries as well.
Thanks, Martin. And unfortunately, our time is already up, folks. So the good news is that this event, and it's been so rich with your contributions, Murilo, Martin and Emma, it is recorded and it will stay on our Nuffield International Network YouTube. So yeah, we should hear tonight. The other thing I just wanted to say is that it's worth having a look at the Nuffield International website, because it's got information on all the different countries that are involved with Nuffield, as well as having a reports page. And all the Nuffield scholars, they write a report at the end of their studies, and that's available as an open source research findings. And there's keyword searches and a whole bunch of different ways that you can search for what you're interested in, or find out something that you didn't realize you were interested in. And the other thing that's also fantastic is the Nuffield International Scholarship is now open and until the 15th of October. So that's scholarships available to people in Japan, Brazil, Zimbabwe, USA, and Chile. That's just through Nuffield International and the member countries. So those countries aren't member countries, but the member countries, that's France, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, the Netherlands, and Canada. They've also got their scholarship programs. So no reason not to get involved. I guess we'll just have a really quick finishing comment from the three of you, and I'm sorry that we haven't had a chance to get through all the questions. So just a quick parting comment, I guess, team, and maybe you might want to mention something about how you're staying engaged with the network, or just something around this alumni piece that Martin mentioned that I think we've interwoven quite nicely into our comments, but perhaps not that overtly. But anyway, just a finishing remark. Murilo, we'll start with you.
So thank you, everybody. Like, keep engaging Nuffield with Nuffield in our country, or in your neighbor country. We touch with the people that's in the network. We are here to help and share. And also in Brazil, you can become a member of the Association Nuffield. You can apply for the scholarship we have. You can sponsor our scholarship. So there's multiple ways to interact. And this will give you great people to debate and learn and share. So invite everybody to do it. So have a
Thank you.
Great week.
Thanks,
everybody. Yeah.
Cheers. Martin.
Yeah.
How long have we got for passing comments?
It's 11 o'clock in your world, my friend, so you're in control of that.
Let's keep it snappy here. So the one thing I would say, agriculture, the sector generally, is the most unbelievably exciting industry to be involved in. Find me another sector where you know that you need to double what you produce today by 2050. I mean, that's just unbelievable. Something that underpins the whole sector. So the sector desperately needs innovative, bright, smart, young people who are really up for the challenge. And I think Nuffield is an organization, through the various things it does across the different countries, that really can facilitate the type of people coming into the sector that not necessarily ever thought about a career in agriculture, but those are the people that the sector desperately needs to solve the challenges that we've got. So much is talked about climate change, but agriculture, unfortunately gets tagged as one of the contributors to, or one of the problems in climate change. Okay, land use probably has not been the best in that respect, but agriculture can actually be part of the solution to climate change and reversing some of the trends that we're seeing. So we desperately need bright, smart, young people who have got the capability and lead, and the organisation can facilitate those people developing their thinking in the sector.
Nice. Good challenge. Emma.
Yeah, and on the back of the exact challenge that Martin has put out there, I would say that just as an individual, people should just challenge themselves and apply, just apply it, because the worst thing that can happen is that you go through a robust interview process where you actually learn about yourself and about what you care about, and more about Nuffield, and you can always have a go again next year if you don't get it. But it is a leadership program unlike any other. Whilst it's about agriculture and that industry that we're describing as being probably the foundational industry, the most primary of primary industries, and vitally important, the scholarship program and the resulting alumni is actually about people. It's a people growth program, and that's what's key to unlocking those challenges that we've discussed. But and that's how we can look at it when we're being maybe philanthropic or altruistic. But ultimately what you end up with is just an amazing group of friends and a support network that you couldn't imagine. You couldn't pay for the amount of advice that you get out of your Nuffield network, and you couldn't pay by way of psychology, or paying a psychologist for the amount of emotional support or the mental support that you get from that network as well. So as much as I remember wanting to punch people in the face when they were saying, oh, you've got to get a Nuffield scholarship and you should apply because it's life-changing, I just thought, how do these people get about saying it's life-changing and they're not embarrassed? And now I would just totally support the notion that it is life-changing because of the people that it brings into your life, that your life will just be so much richer because of. So apply.
Wonderful. Thank you. No, that's great. And, thanks Murilo, thanks Martin, and thanks Emma for making yourselves available. I know why you do it, because it is such a great experience, and we learn through Nuffield that you gain by giving. And so by being part of something, it's an opportunity to contribute, and by contributing, it's an opportunity to learn and go forth. So we've had a really, really nice chat. It's an hour's not enough, but at the same time, it's all we've got. We've decided to keep them this short. We've got some really great questions that I haven't been able to get to, unfortunately, but thank you for everyone who's been online with us. And thanks again to Murilo, Martin, and Emma. This Nuffield Talks, it's quite a new thing. We're doing one in English every month, and we're doing one in Portuguese, focused for our Brazilian audience, also once a month. So stay tuned, and on the Nuffield website, for anyone who's new, you can there's a little bell there that you can click, and whenever a new video comes on it lets you know, so you can keep up to date with the happenings. So, and just to reinforce it, we've got the Nuffield scholarships opening for 2021. So COVID or not, this leadership development is required, and we're committed to making it happen. So thanks, and see you at the next event. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.